to be singing 317. New month, new song. 317, I am blessed. Go through it 2 times.
Amos. We left off at the earthquake, the prediction of the earthquake, that the prediction of the earthquake is made 2 years before the earthquake. Bible scoffers run to that verse to disprove the Bible. They'll say that this was written then after the earthquake. And so no matter where you go, there are Bible scoffers and people who will argue with you. So we'll pick this up at number 13 here, the Message, which is here a famous verses, Amos 3:3. Thinking of threes, what's the other one with threes in it? All threes. What book and what's the chapter and verse? It's all threes. Jeremiah 3:3. I think it's 33 verse 3. And what is that?
Oh, God's phone number.
And we say it's God's phone number. Now quote the verse.
Call on me.
Call on me. Pardon?
Unto me.
Call unto me. Yeah, but that's not the whole verse.
And I will answer.
Call unto me and I will answer. Jeremiah 3:3.
Anytime, day or night.
Day or night. And it's not if he answers the phone. If you answer the phone, you're not going to hear on those junk calls. I don't know. They ought to know that people can tell the junk call without even looking at the screens to hear that they're in a hall with 40 other people. So when you make those kind of calls to God, though, it's not. Those aren't junk calls. All right, a famous verse here. Can two walk together except they be agreed? Except they be agreed. And so what comes to mind where you can really apply this verse if you were practically going to apply the verse to your life? Nobody wants to participate? Apply it to your life. Marriage, friendship. What'd you all say? Business, maybe? Business.
Could it be also a communion with God?
Oh yeah, exactly. Can two walk together except they be agreed? If you're not in agreement with God, you can't be walking together.
You feet got to be in agreement with each other. You got the same shoes on.
Say that again?
Your feet have to be in agreement with each other with the same shoes.
Oh, absolutely.
So wear different shoes.
Yeah, otherwise you can't get too far if your feet aren't in agreement. Yeah. So can two walk together except they be agreed? And isn't that a shame? It's everywhere. Shipper. Another good verse, Amos 4:12. Therefore, thus will I do unto thee, O Israel, and because I will do this unto thee, prepare to meet thy God, O Israel. So, very famous verse, or well-known verse, prepare to meet thy God. I mean, these are common verses that even lost people know. If you're in a war, if you're, they got a gun, before they shoot the gun, prepare to meet thy God. Boom. And so on. You know, they say these things to each other. But when people drift off into eternity, prepare to meet thy God. You're going to meet they'll say you're going to meet your Maker. And then there are those that are drifting off and they say, I'm going to meet my Maker. They're ready to go. And they'll openly make that kind of a statement. All right, the outline that you would want for this, chapters 1 through chapter 2, verse 3 is the judgment of nations. And then more specifically, verse 4 through chapter 6, 14, the judgment of Judah and Israel. And then the future events, visions of the future, chapter 7 through 9. Remember, a good portion of the Old Testament is still yet to be fulfilled. Reveals the principle of national sins, brings national judgment. Why don't we turn to Psalm 33:12? I have that kind of added in here. Psalm 33:12. You'll find this basically in Deuteronomy. If you do right, you're gonna receive good. If you do wrong, you're gonna pay the price. 33:12. In Galatians, what is the verse then? It being Galatians chapter 6.
So,
You're going to reap what you sow. Reap what you sow. 33:12. The law. It's the law of sowing and reaping. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. The nation whose God is the Lord. It appears as though America has forsaken God. You would kind of hear that drumbeat, and they take these polls as far as people are drifting away more and more. So there's fewer and fewer people going to church. But this is still this thing with the ad. But by the way, Friday was the last ad. And I had stopped in over here at the, I do work for St. John's here for the funeral parlor. And they had mentioned they saw me on TV, and we talked about it for quite a while. Anyway, it seems as though America seems to be drifting further and further away. But one thing for sure is what we go on our assumptions. It seems as though America is lost its way. When you come out and you profess your Christianity, people take note of that. And that there are, we call them secret agents. There's more people out there than you probably think. Give me a good verse. Elijah, not Elisha, Elijah. What does he say? He is arguing with God. He's in the cave, and God interrupts him at the end.
He says, I did so much, I'm the only one left standing.
He's the last man standing. And then what does God say?
No, there's another 3 grand or 7,000.
7,000 that have not bowed the knee nor kissed the image of Baal. So, rest assured, always remember, you are not alone. You're not alone.
Yeah, but he had a scorned woman after him.
Yeah, he had that.
You can't defeat those. No way.
Well, what? Who did her in?
the dogs.
Well, she was dead when the dogs got her. I guess her
Her eunuchs threw her out the window.
they threw her out the window, but who is the one that was in the gate and said, throw her down? I can't think of his name. He was the king of, not Judah, king of Israel.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the king of Israel. And
Them, right? Or Jay?
it's Jez.
Jezebel.
Yeah, well, it's not Jezebel, but
King Jezebel, yeah.
Yeah, King Jezebel. It's the one that the guy ran in and anointed him. And they said, what did he want? And he said, he just anointed me king. And they put whatever under his seat, and then he sat down and they said, hail the king and all. And he cleans house. He's supposed to clean house, and he does. But what was his sin? Why did God do him in? I can't think of his name right now. Well, why did God do him in? Every mistake the North made, what was it? He still committed the sins of Rehoboam. Or is it Jeroboam? He committed those sins. Every one of the kings, they never forsook that. They still did the 4 sins. You know, the 2 golden calves, the made priests of the lowest of people, changed the clock, and the times in the season for they worshiped devils. There was 4 things they did, and he did not forsake it either. But he did do what God would have him to do. So he was not a minister of Christ. He would be considered then a minister of God in the New Testament, if he was in the New Testament. Anyway, what verse were we on? Oh, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. I have in my column, it's George Washington's favorite verse. That Psalm 33:12. What is America's, what we would call pretty standard fare 30 years ago or more, the national sin? America's national sin. Abortion. And then what happened because of Manasseh? Even though Manasseh repented, and then there were good kings after, because of Manasseh, we'll use him as the example, he was the longest reigning king from Judah.
He showed his mercy. We let him repent, and they let him live longer.
Yeah, they let him live longer. But what was the main thing? Because of what was Manasseh's sin? He shed much innocent blood, and because of that, it says that God would not repent. Judgment was coming. It's over. It's over.
But he was, I don't know, maybe this is not a good idea. He was the longest king. Kind of in my eyes shows he was like long-suffering or...
You mean God is long-suffering? Yeah, God's long-suffering.
You're right, he did. He said it's over, it's done, but...
You can view it different ways. You can view it that way.
If it was low as it was God, because God was gracious and trying to get as many people to turn.
Give me another one. Well, how God is gracious in the length of time. Right from the get-go in Genesis chapter 3, chapter 5, chapter 5 and 6.
And Eve.
No, that's after Adam and Eve. Chapter 5 and 6. No, not Sodom and Gomorrah. That's down the road after that. It's in between.
I'm going to guess.
Who's the longest living man? Methuselah. Oh, you did? You said Methuselah. All right, it shows God's grace in the length. That's why the Lord is 2,000 years still yet coming, is because of his grace. He hopes that more people get saved. The hope is that more people will be saved. All right, judgment of the nations, Judah, Israel, and then the future events. It reveals the principal national sins. Oh yeah, we just looked at it. It brings national judgment. And we did go through the Circle of Nations. The Circle of Nations, I have it written down in my Bible. It was developed by somebody in the 1700s. Let me get there. I have it between my Old and New Testament. And I'll just read them off. The Rise and Fall of Nations, 1750 by Alexander Tyler. The predictable pattern of a nation. They go from bondage to spiritual faith. When did that happen in America? With the arrival of who? What groups? The Pilgrims, the Puritans. They were running and escaping the Church of England and the king and being killed and persecuted in England. They came to America. So they go from spiritual faith to great courage. It took a lot of courage to get out of a little tugboat and sail to America and go to a place where you run the risk of losing your hair and starving. And then courage to liberty, 1776. Liberty to abundance. When did abundance come to America? It would be called what revolution? In the mid-1800s. The Industrial Revolution, where the bulk of the products in the world were made here. It was made here in America. Then from abundance to complacency. Like, who cares? No one seems to care. And then complacency to apathy. Basically, just more of the same. From apathy to dependency. And so people just get dependent on the government, and they get dependent upon their parents and so on. And from dependency, it goes back to bondage. That's the circle, the rise and fall of nations. It's kind of like a circle. In this Murdoch trial, it was that Judge Janine said three things, and I've never heard this stated about money. She had said, it must be a common saying, I'd never heard of it, is that the first generation makes the money. Then comes, by the way, Murdoch, the guy that went, he's the fourth generation. The second generation spends the money.
Talk about Rupert?
Well, just in generality, somebody makes the money. The first generation, they've got the get up and go, they went out and made the money. Then the offspring of that, the second generation.
The second generation always earns it.
Well, no, she said, now this is what she said, spends the money.
And third destroys it, yeah.
And the third generation blows the money.
Yeah.
And I remember there were a couple of these things on Paul Harvey. One was, maybe we'll just mention the one. One was, I don't know if it's 7-Elevens, Dairy Mart, what were a couple other those little places? Lawson's is another. Lawson's, Dairy Mart, 7-Eleven. It's one of those groups. One of them. It was worth $7 million to $11 million. And that's what I thought I heard. And it was on Paul Harvey. Now, $7 to $11 million, maybe that's worth $50 million today. I assume it was not the first generation. I would assume it's the second or third generation. He goes to Las Vegas and blew it in a weekend. He blew the whole thing in one weekend. He took all the money and gambled it away. Hello, this is Paul Harvey. It was on Paul Harvey 50 years ago. He blew the whole thing.
Jerry Mark bought Lawson's.
Jerry Mark bought Lawson's.
And
Okay.
now Circle K's got it.
Well, it was whatever it was, whatever store it was, it all got blown.
When they said it closed at 11.
Yeah. Another one was Max Factor. That was on one of these programs too. This is 50 years ago. It's a multi-billion-dollar business, I believe. Max, women's makeup. Max Factor. Is that all you girls have heard of Max Factor? It was the grandson went and killed somebody, convicted of murder. He'll spend the rest of his days, he'll never see the light of day. He gave up the whole fortune because he got jealous or envious of something and killed somebody. And he was the direct heir. People, they're not thinking straight. Just not thinking straight. And so the same is true about, and what was the fear? Why would they, when they came in Deuteronomy, and the warning is given when they crossed the land into the land of Canaan, and they took over. Oh, by the way, they didn't take over all at once because they said if God kicked it all out, the animals would have taken over, and they would have had to fight the lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! What was the problem to beware of when they went into the land of Canaan?
You get fat and sassy.
They would get, what'd you say, fat and sassy? Fat and sassy. They moved into houses. It said you're going to move into houses that you did not build, all the orchards that you did not plant. You're going to inherit all this. It's all going to be set up and running, and you're going to forget God. You'll forget God. And basically that's what happens. They forget God and they forsake it. It's kind of like this. There's a generation they get. By the way, God has no what? Pardon? God has no grandchildren.
It's not my fault.
Always remember that. God has no grandchildren. So everybody that's going to go to heaven has got to be saved. You cannot inherit it from your parents. So if you don't get the burden on your sin and the conviction of your sin and get saved, you're just going to drift away just like any other lost person. All right. And people get complacent. The minute the furniture store down here, there's two of them. One burnt down in Bedford, towering inferno. I don't ever remember that. But it was the oldest family-owned business, I believe, in America. Was right here in Bedford. And I think it was started in 1815 or so. I would do engraving for them. I made plaques for them, etc. I didn't do a lot of work. We made badges. I did a trade with them. So I have one of their chairs. And all the tooling, I talked to guys that were in the tool that worked there. He said most all that's buried with bulldozers at the bottom of the hill. They bulldozed it. They should have called those Amish boys up here. But a lot of it got bulldozed. The minute it wasn't the family name, and I knew the guy that took over, it wasn't the family name, they don't have their hat in the ring. And within, they built that big, huge building, and it just went defunct, belly up. And then they had the big auction. And then those that came to the auction, I was talking to other manufacturers that were there, they said they actually felt guilty buying it. Because what they were producing was nothing as good as what they were purchasing. But you couldn't purchase it because everybody wants to, how much do they want to spend? Your customer. The customer wants it as little as possible. So instead of nice curved arms and fancy button tufting and all that, that goes by the wayside. They want just straight lines, build it fast, get it out there, put it in a hospital waiting room. What you're sitting in those hospitals, and it's as cheap as it can get because it's always about the bottom line. It's always about the bottom line. But here we're talking about sin. 6 nations of judgment for sins committed against Israel. If we go to Amos chapter 1, we name them off. Now I have them highlighted in my Bible. I get highlighters and that are made for this Indian paper and highlight that. So if you look at verse 3, the city there, or this country, Damascus, it's not in the list here. Damascus, that may be Syria. You got in verse 5, you got Damascus and Eden. In verse 6 of chapter 1, you have Gaza. In verse 8, you have Ashdod, you have Ashkelon, you have Ekron. Verse 9, you have Tyrus. And these must be the cities and so that are associated with these countries. You have verse 11, Edom. You have verse 13, you have Ammon. That's the one that God really wanted to get, was Ammon. And then in chapter 2, verse 1, you have Moab. So it is the judgment of the nations. Judgment of the nations. Turning the page. 3 transgressions and for 4. He says this over and over again. Yeah, look at verse 11 of chapter 1. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4. It's always 3 and 4. If you add the 2, it's the perfect number of 7. It is going to be perfect judgment. They are going to be judged and punished. Name off some of these nations that are godless. As far as the true God.
Presently,
Yeah, let's say in the last 100 years.
most of Europe now.
Most of Europe now. Why did Europe last so long? Why was it that the sun never set on Britain?
King James Bible.
Yeah, the King James Bible, they were, if you trace Christianity, it comes up through there and then back over into America. By the way, wherever it is not the true gospel, what is the end result financially? Poverty. Poverty. When you think of rich countries, what countries do you think of? You think of America, that are really rich. You think of, in Europe, you think of England, the construction, those things that are rich. What do you think of, what are the poor countries? Poor. Africa. I mean, spirit chuckers. They're worshiping devils. Give me another one. Africa. Uh-oh, yeah, well, what can you do? I think his film ran out. Africa, give me another one.
Haiti.
Yeah, the Haitians. What kind of religion do they practice down there? They make movies about it.
Witchcraft.
Witchcraft. What kind of witchcraft? What's coming out of the grave? What do they call that? We have people that like to watch these movies. What do they call that guy that comes out in the 1950s, 1940s? They come out of the grave.
Zombies.
Zombies. Yeah, that's what's going on down there. Zombies. Name off other poor countries or continents. Africa.
Middle East.
Huh? Papua New Guinea. Yeah, it's all. Yeah, it's cannibalism. Give me all of South America. That's not rich. It's all poverty.
South Africa.
It's because of false religion. Say it again.
South Africa.
But South Africa is the opposite because it's a British colony.
If you look at anywhere in the world, there's no money because they won't turn to God.
They won't turn to God. So you got Africa. What is India? It's the caste system. Very few people there have any money.
It should scare us because the reality is that we're not a Christian nation anymore. It's only a matter of time.
And it's only a matter of time before the whole world goes
Yes,
around.
that's lasted 55 years. So when did abortion come into play? 70s? It's close.
Yeah, it's 70s, early 70s.
It's close.
And so you got Russia. Russia is there's no God there in Russia.
Right. There's never any money there.
And that collapsed in 70 years. And the last thing you want coming into your, I always say this, the only reason that, I should say the reason why Germany lost the war, they went after the Jews, and God doesn't like that. Otherwise, what kept the Germans from shooting everybody and putting everybody in the oven? Everybody. At the end, they got desperate just to mow them down. Because there's enough Lutherans there with a conscience. And who didn't you want coming to take over?
The godless ones.
The godless people, which was Russia. That was the fear. There's no God there. They don't care. They just kill you.
Australia's another one, they were successful.
And look at what's happening there. It's as liberal as it gets. Yeah. And by the way, that was Australia was nothing more than Aborigines and a prison. Australia is a prison.
I know that.
Pardon?
I know that the gospel went there, it's successful.
But it went there. Yeah, it's the same thing as Devil's Island. And where would the French send theirs? Is that Devil's Island? The French send theirs someplace. Well, the English did that. We don't want these guys, but we'll send them 5,000 miles away. If they're 5,000 miles away, they can't bother us, so dump them off. Anyway, where are we at here? All right, for 3 and 4. For three transgressions of Edom, and for 4, it's repeated over and over again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It's repeated over and over again. Proverbs 6:16. Turn there. We'll see what that says. Oh, yeah, here's the same thing. These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, and he changes it, 7 are an abomination unto him. So, in other words, a complete abomination. In other words, just going back to the number 7. And then we'll pick this up and we'll start again on number 17 in 2 weeks, because we're going to have a work session next Sunday morning with rubber stamps, formatting, with vinyl going, and a checkout of the... So, Laddie, you also come prepared to go up there with in your soccer togs, all right? Or whatever, to get up there. Father, bless now the preaching. Praise